This podcast is brought to you by the School of Advanced Study, University of London. All of our podcasts are available from our website, www.sas.ac.uk.
Yes.
So, for Andreas, what was the UN's role in the 1961 Berlin crisis?
I don't really know. I assume there might have been some protests too, but I mean, as if the Americans and the British and the others did, they didn't do anything major. And it was, in some ways, it was internal affairs. I mean, if the East Germans closed their borders, if then people couldn't leave anymore, what could the UN do about this?
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any further questions? Yes.
Bonjour. Sorry, I had to say that.
I speak probably Canadian French,
just to make you take a pause and wonder. I'm sorry, my apologies for being late. Trains and totally unavoidable. So I'm sorry I missed the first speaker, and I'll catch up on what you said from asking everyone else later on having the chat. I just want to make a general observation, which was that looking at what everyone was sort of saying about Kennedy, the word that came out strongly in describing his, say, foreign policy style was pragmatic. He seemed to be fairly pragmatic about how he could achieve this, and was a sort of problem-solving president by the sounds of it. So if you could find a pragmatic solution that was passive, especially with regard to Yugoslavia. I mean, I don't think he saw them as an aggressive communist regime. He saw them as a passive communist, and therefore more stable, more able to relate to. And so that's why he adopted a different pragmatic approach to them. And I think that's how he was with each problem that came up. If you agree, that's his general style, or either wrong.
Okay, thank you very much. Yes, at the back there.
Thank you. Probably a question for Andreas and Kasper, since you both treated Berlin in a sense. My question would be, to what extent Kasper said that he was not that interested, whereas in the first presentation we heard a lot about symbolic policies that have more to do with showing credibility and so on. To what extent this might have been due to the fact that Kennedy recognized that the Berlin problem could not be solved, that it was in a sense impossible to definitively solve the Berlin problem, find a definitive solution?
Well, the Berlin problem, or the German question, was a crucial question of the Cold War, and I agree with you that they would have liked some more diplomatic solution or negotiation solution. On the other hand, I think you totally underestimate the symbolic, and I talked about this in my presentation, the symbolic importance, because if it had looked like they sold out the Germans, Berlin was so, as you also mentioned, Berlin was so important in the fall. So if there was any indication that they were selling out the Germans, what effect could this have anywhere else? And they were always thinking, what effect will it have anywhere else? We made a promise, Kennedy made a promise again in July. So while there were those discussions, I don't think they would have come to fruition because they would have been way too afraid to do this. Would have seen us selling out by the Germans.
Well, I agree with you the fact that they were not ready to cave on what sort of became the three essentials. That's sort of one thing, and I mean, the credibility issue was also sort of addressed in that. But I mean, if you look at what I mean, obviously, and this is a bit of a caveat, we don't really know what Kennedy thought deep down, because he, I mean, wrote so very little, and we don't have all of these things. If you look at what was going on around him, and what George Bundy was promoting, they were pretty far in, at least sort of doing somewhat on the broader German question. I mean, not on the status of Berlin itself, because nothing of the free city or whatever, but on the sort of recognition of the Oder-Neisse line. Now, not obviously a sort of legal recognition of the German Democratic Republic, but some kind of de facto recognition they were ready for. And I mean, the relationship between Kennedy and Mayor Brandt was, I mean, it was not very good. And I don't think that the symbolic gestures that were made during the fall, I don't think that they would have continued if they had been able to find some kind of solution, because I think that after following the UN General Assembly, they were so ready to actually engage in negotiations, they had cut the others out, the allies out. They were only bilateral talks. So I think they would have, if they could have had some wiggle room with the Soviets, I think they would have taken some kind of deal.
Okay, well that sounds the start of a fascinating discussion. I don't really think we have enough time to continue it, I'm afraid. It's rather that we, if we don't want to disrupt the whole conference timetable massively, I think we better go for our tea break, and an abbreviated tea break now. So, very quickly,
just comment.
Very fast, yes.
The pragmatism, it's really the right word, because should you compare Kennedy's policy to the one pursued by Truman, Eisenhower, or if you want, Lyndon Johnson after that, I would say that they distinguish immensely, and it is really the good word, pragmatism, how Kennedy's policy was put in place, at least when it comes to bilateral relations with the countries, basically the Balkans.
But it's true for domestic policy too, I think. Not taking a step that you cannot take back, except if you really have to, so keeping options open, if it's a right or other thing, as long as possible.
Okay, it's good to end on a note of agreement. So let's adjourn.